Yeah. Can I hold it? I just hold it. Thank you all. There's the man of the hour, my grandson Luke. So, wow, I don't have a prepared script. I usually depend on God to provide something at the hour. And he usually comes through on, I'm not sure about right now. The overriding sentiment, though, that comes right now is I'm amazed. I mean, I'm looking out at all these people that I admire and respect, and they're clapping for me. And, I'm the fortunate guy that got to write about what you all have done. I'm the tall, skinny, awkward, fatherless boy in Duncan. And if you could have ever told me in some of my unhappy, questioning years, 12, 13, 14, 15, and on, that this would happen, I might have believed in Jesus sooner than I did, Mo. Because that's a true miracle, a true miracle. As I look back, the closest thing I ever had to a dad was Duncan, Oklahoma. And you don't see it when you're there, right? Southside Oklahoma City, these other little towns and places, urban places where we grew up. But I look back now, and somehow a bunch of people took hold of me, and they overlooked my stupidities, my foolishness, my recklessness, my dangerous escapades, and they never gave up on me. And they somehow shooed me on out of there with a place to go and a plan and a hope. That was Duncan. And so I know the Andersons and some of the rest of you all, you get to a point in your life and you realize you can write a book, you can rebuild Waukomis, Oklahoma, you can put domes on the Capitol like Governor Keating did, but nothing we can ever do can repay what this state did for us, what this people did for us. And I've never been more convinced of that than the last 2 years, as this country has about come apart at the seams, and I've watched communities in other states that have just lost their minds, lost their hope, people leaving them by the thousands, and I have never appreciated Oklahoma more than I have these last 2 years. Amen. So, I'm suspecting that maybe a little of the reason that Dr. Bob took a chance on me and kept letting me come back and take his time on appointments month after year after decade. Our first visit about this was in 2001. We were talking about doing a Stan Wadey novel for the Centennial event. And that didn't happen, but a lot more has happened since, hadn't it? So I'm suspecting that maybe a smidgen of the reason why he gave me a shot was because he knew that I would go in there and I wouldn't flinch from telling about our sorrows, sometimes our ugliness, our loss, our tragedies, but that I would find what I know Dr. Bob has always known, that there has never been a place or a time in Oklahoma history, no matter how dark it was, where there was not a hero that stood up and at least tried to do what was right and took a stand no matter how hard they got clobbered for doing it. And I'm 100 times more convinced of that truth now after spending 17 years on this, that whether it was during the oil boom and bust or during the burning of Greenwood or during the county commissioners or during, you pick the darkest part of our history, and that's part of what you're going to see in this book. And Mart, I got bad news for you, brother. I don't know how to break this to you, but this book is about twice as long as volume 1. But my wife will be happy about this. She's always going, John, I'm a visual learner. I'm a visual learner. It has 800 illustrations, no kidding. So we show it. We don't just tell it. But I'm hoping that you're going to see that when there was no one around, some Oklahomans stepped up to do the right thing. And you think, well, why do we know about these people? Or I just thought that they were all crooks back during, the Supreme Court scandal or the county commissioner scandal or the governor scandal or the legislative scandal, just going. And you're going to find, I think, in this book that some tenacious Oklahoman always dared to stick their head up in the line of fire and step up for what was right. And why do we not know about them? Well, it's because a lot of times they didn't win as men count winning. You follow what I'm saying here? They might not have been the one that got their picture on the dollar bill or their name on the calendar or the holiday. But as God counts men and women as heroes, we have had plenty of them. And Dr. Bob and Coach Stan White, I know you're watching this on the live stream. He couldn't be here tonight. Does anybody here know who Coach Stan White, Douglas Trojans is? Hall of Fame high school coach. Stan White taught me more Oklahoma history than he's probably ever forgotten. And he'd have been here if he didn't have leukemia and pulmonary fibrosis right now. But God bless you, brother, because he'd be the first to say, yeah, a lot of the heroes, you don't know their names because they didn't win as men counted winning. But here we are, here I am learning as I tell their story. And when you read this book, you're going to go, my gosh, look at what that person did. I never heard him. I heard this crook, this rascal that got rich and famous, and everybody said was the man walking down the street. But there was someone else that I never heard of, and that's my job. And Dr. Bob, Dr. Castor, and some others, Steve Bias, taught me that, is you go dig it out and you find the truth, and no matter how long it takes, even if it's 17 years, right, Dr. Bob? That's how we know that our history, and this is my final point, and I'll close, but I do want to encourage you. We have other authors here tonight, several of them, Oklahoma authors back there. I hope some fine authors. I hope you'll look at their books and buy their books. Mike Clemmy, our greatest photographer in the history of this state, his works are back there. But our history is closer than we realize, my friends. It is all around us. And this is the message I have tonight, is to prove that to you. Because we have Dr. Bill Carmack over here. Now, Dr. Bill, have you ever been in a comprehensive Oklahoma history book before? No. Not really. And I'm not saying that to shame anyone else, but I'm saying that because when you think about, if you're even aware, that there was about a century from statehood to the late 1970s where our tribes were in the wilderness, literally and figuratively. And Lisa J. Billy, Chickasaw leader, taught me this years ago. So she was a terming out state legislative leader. And I said, well, what happened to the tribes after 1907? And I only wish I could remember her eloquent response, but it was eloquent enough where I never forgot it. And it set me on a detective hunt to find out what happened. And what I found out, among other things, was more than any one individual in America, Dr. Bill Carmack over here, University of Oklahoma professor emeritus, regent professor, went to Washington, D.C. with Senator Fred Harris and LaDonna Harris. And what they did was they figured out that our tribes, far from needing to be terminated, that was the term, they were getting ready to be officially written out of existence. You talk about a little early day case of cancellation, the cancel culture. Well, Dr. Carmack worked a lost art across party lines. He worked as a high official in the LBJ administration and the Nixon administration and their vice presidents. He wrote the Forgotten American speech, 1968. Look that one up if you're not familiar with it. And this man, behind the scenes, once again, months, years, and even decades, we look now and wonder and marvel at the accomplishments of our tribes. Because when I was a kid, if you were part Native, you weren't proud of that. You wouldn't even tell anybody. You might get made fun of. You might get called a name. Now we're all on Ancestry looking up to see, do I have even 1% of a tribe, right? This man over here worked with Washington to get presidents to take actions, and Dr. Bob taught me a lot of this. What do we see now? That did not just happen out of the ether. Dr. Bill Carmack, you'll read his story. We talked about the Vietnamese. Amy Lee, I don't know where you are, I know you're here tonight. She's an award-winning, back there, Amy Lee, God bless you. Yeah, her mom got her out of Vietnam because she didn't want to live under communism. I bet Oklahomans can appreciate that, right? And she paid a big price to do that. She didn't want to live under tyranny and atheism. So she brought Amy to America, and now Amy is in Oklahoma, the president of the Oklahoma City Writers Club, and just won a huge literary award for her 3-novel trilogy of Vietnamese history, of which the hero is modeled on her own mother. That's Amy Lee. Vietnam history is closer than we would realize. Or how about Dave Robinson, my handsome, I'm disgusted, he's my age and he looks like my son now. All that blonde hair. So Roby, all he did was take the gospel of Christ to countries that now are our allies against the Russians. Well, back then they were under the heel of the Russians, under the Russian boot, behind a place called the Iron Curtain. Roby had the audacity. We always would ask Doug Miller and some of my other fraternity brothers here, Rob Berry, what is Roby doing? Where is he? You know, he wouldn't tell us much. Well, he was in places like Hungary and Poland, these places where the Soviet Red Star was ruling by force of arms, torturing, murdering, killing, trying to get rid of God. And these guys had the audacity to take the gospel into those countries and lead a spiritual awakening in the country of Hungary that transformed that country to this day. So that now you have a strange phenomenon. The country of Hungary is sponsoring college scholarships to children from countries like Syria and others in the Middle East to come there and study. Okay? Now, Dave, you've probably been in a lot of Oklahoma history books for doing that, right? No. So right here we have one of the leaders, because we think, well, the Berlin Wall fell. Well, they just got tired of communism. People, the real story was they got the gospel told to them. And they realized there was a freedom they were never going to get with that dirty, filthy Red Star. And it started in Hungary. And when the Hungarians just en masse swarmed across East Germany, and they realized there's no border guards at the frontier anymore. We can leave. That's when the Berlin Wall came down, 1989. Okay? Margaret Taylor back here, Miss History Muskogee, has put together the Muskogee All-American History Facebook page, thousands of members. She and her husband have put together the Bass Reeves Walk in Muskogee. She taught me that Muskogee, alone among America, had 2 black business districts for decades while being oppressed and prejudiced against them and left out of things, not given opportunities. They did it the old-fashioned American way. They sucked it up and they did it themselves. They did it themselves with the help of God. And Margaret Taylor is building a base there in Muskogee of people learning not just about that, but the history of that entire part of the state. I mentioned Mo and Richard Anderson. It's kind of like almost, well, probably already everybody knows this, but no, probably not everybody knows it, Mo. Yeah, have you ever met a girl that was a daughter of a tenant farmer in Dust Bowl, Oklahoma, who literally went to school, grade school like my grandson's in now, wearing canvas and burlap feed sack dresses to school? And I guess it was fancy because you get different colors dyed probably, right? That would be the variety. And all she did was grow up to build the biggest real estate franchise company in world history. If you've ever heard of Keller Williams, Mo Anderson is the lady that went in there and built that. And we tell her story in the book too. And of course, like I said, Richard earlier, all he did was go into Wacomas Wakulla is his Duncan, okay? He took Mo's vision that I'm going to put back in. No matter how much I put back in, it can never be as much as they put into me and what this great man of God turned out to be. There was someone else I was going to mention. Yes. We talked about the Vietnamese, and I'll close with this. And what I like to talk about, again, is those American heroes and Oklahoma heroes that typically get overlooked. Because there were some boys, in case y'all don't remember, that went over to fight for the freedom of Amy Lee and her mom, right? And provided a way for them to escape when the country they were living in decided that it was going to pursue a different path than they wanted. People like Tom Hill, I don't know where Tom is, but I know he's here tonight. He flew 176 missions in the air, probably the most dangerous air war for Americans ever in American history. Then he came back and built a little company called Kimray for 50 years, wrote the Character First book. And back during the 80s, Kimray would help people out that got laid off. They would come up with ingenious ways to help people during that Great Depression, which, yeah, New York and California didn't say that, but here in Oklahoma, that was a depression we lived through in the early to mid-80s. It took us till the mid-90s to get out of it. So there was Tom Hill. There was a gentleman named Harvey Pratt. You're hiding out there, I know, somewhere, Harvey. So, yeah, Harvey, all he did as, what, a 19-year-old United States Marine, drop out of a helicopter with the communists firing machine guns at him, rappelled down and rescued American fighter pilots that were shot down in the jungles of Vietnam and take them back to safety. I said, well, gosh, Harvey, what'd you think about that? And I thought he was going to say something real eloquent. He goes, I knew I should have listened to him when they told me, don't ever volunteer for anything in the Marines. Well, of course, some of you all know he went on to be probably America's greatest forensics artist. He could figure out what a criminal looked like 30 or 40 years later or 30 or 40 years before to help track down the bad guys. And speaking of bad guys, he tracked down, by doing detective work all over the Cookson Hills in eastern Oklahoma, tracked down, captured that rotten Girl Scout murderer that some of us remember from the late 1970s. And then recently in his retirement age, he just had a little hobby where he designed the winning entry in the Native American Veterans Memorial that will be the last monument put on the mall in Washington, D.C. So Harvey, where are you? God bless you, brother. And his kids went to the same school my daughter did, Christian Heritage Academy. Okay, so that's all I have. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be the scribe that gets to tell the story about all the sacrifice, the tears, the coming back, the second, the third, and sometimes the last chance that has made this state the only place I ever want to live again. Thank you, and God bless you all. Oh, thank you. Thank you.